Well, good morning, and thank you for being here as Mr. Hudak has his session ender. So how many times have you heard that a week is a long time in politics? Well, if you're like most frustrated Ontarians trying to make sense of Queen's Park these days, the session just ended must have felt like a very long time indeed. It began with a deficit number that somehow shot up by another $1 billion once the October election was safely out of the way, of course. It continued with a throne speech that made most bumper stickers read like War and Peace. It followed with a fall economic statement that had nothing to say about the economy we actually live in, and it was capped by revelations of mismanagement that made e-health look like a bake sale. Making things worse was the fact that the Premier was hearing voices. The voice of Ontario's Auditor General, whose pre-election report logged spending increases of 7% on top of 7% on top of 7% year after year after year. The voice of Don Drummond, signaling this government to slam the brakes on that spending if we're ever to see a balanced budget again. Voices from Germany, Spain, Australia, the UK, and the US saying subsidies for so-called green jobs have killed more real jobs wherever they've been tried. Then the Auditor General again, with a catalogue of failed social engineering, sloppy oversight, wasted tax dollars, lousy or non-existent planning, and just plain dumb choices. Those voices, all independent, were telling the Premier just what we've been telling him for a long time now. You, sir, have a spending problem. It's a problem for Ontarians who look to government to set the right priorities and provide the right services, only to find that if there were a Ministry of Debt Servicing in Ontario, it would be the third biggest and costliest behind health and education. It's a problem for struggling private sector workers in this province who watch as their incomes decline while public sector workers enjoy salaries and benefits fully 27% higher than their own. But most of all, it's a problem for taxpayers, who can only watch as an ever-growing chunk of their paychecks is squandered by this government. So no, this is not just Mr. McGuinty's problem, it's everyone's problem. Hand it over to Tim.
Well, thanks very much, Jim. Just to add on to my House Leader's comments, who's walking away from me and listening to his chance to be in the camera shot on CTV. We went through this session and put every Liberal initiative to a stress test, just like the banks went through a stress test in the 2008 financial crisis. So too will put Liberal initiatives through a stress test. Does it actually address the growing debt crisis in the province of Ontario? Does it address the looming jobs crisis in the province of Ontario? Will an initiative actually get out of the way of business and support innovation, private sector job creation? Does an initiative reduce the size and cost of government, or does it bloat an already bloated government even more? Will an initiative actually bring greater accountability and transparency to the taxpayer at the end of the day? And sadly, the initiatives we've seen from the McGuinty government have failed those stress tests one by one. We voted against a throne speech that would have increased the deficit by $2.5 billion more. We've already seen the deficit go up under this current government. What troubles me even more is, this session actually started with some degree of promise when it comes to the debt crisis in this province. It looked like the Drummond Commission report was going to be the silver bullet. It would come forward and give us a roadmap on how to reduce the size and cost of government and deal with the looming debt crisis, to actually take action today before Ontario turns into Canada's version of Greece. But I'm worried now that we saw in the House the McGuinty government didn't have one single idea to rein in runaway spending. I'm hearing now words that seem to be signaling to me that the government may be backing away from the Drummond Commission report. So it's moved from the silver bullet to the study that may come out and may go to committee along with other options to inform a conversation to one day maybe make a decision to reduce a government program here or there. I'm concerned that they're backing away from the only initiative they talked about that showed some degree of promise when it came to reining in the size and cost of government. So if Don McGuinty's out of ideas, he's welcome to take mine. Bring in a public sector wage freeze across the board to save taxpayers $2 billion. And I think it's only fair at this time of a debt crisis that we ask our public servants to pitch in, not get a pay increase next year. If we truly want to preserve essential services like classroom education, nursing care, MRIs, we need to make some tough decisions today. Otherwise, we're mortgaging the future of our kids and grandkids and putting those services into jeopardy down the road. We talked about fixing a broken arbitration act and make sure that public sector agreements actually reflect the ability of families and communities to pay the bills. And we've talked about modernizing our outdated 1970s-style apprenticeship system to create 200,000 jobs in the skilled trades for people who want to be electricians, plumbers, HVAC operators. These are all good ideas. So if Don McGuinty doesn't have ideas of his own, he's welcome to take ours. But the point I'll make, we have wasted now 64 days since the election campaign. A growing deficit, a growing debt as a result. And I'm worried we won't see any action from this government until the House comes back in February. The hard work should be begun right after the election day, and at the very least, it should start today. So thanks. Glad to take any questions that you may have.